This is my full plan to buy Bitcoin on this current move. Of course, the long-term signals that we've been looking for have now fired off. So I do like the long term. However, in the short term, I want to once again front load this content by stating, hey, as long as Bitcoin is below, very specifically, this lower high here from the 6th of March at just under 93,000 bucks, there is still a realistic threat from a technical perspective of another move down somewhere around the current lows. Perhaps it's a slightly higher low, perhaps it's, the same low. But as long as Bitcoin is again below this very specific pivot right here, there is still a realistic threat of this correction continuing to, drag perhaps a little bit lower than where things are trading right now at 88,000 bucks. Now we'll get into the big information in just a moment here, because there are several things in the background that are now coalescing, and well, that's what I would like to see and what I've been waiting for. But before we get into that, I should let everyone know that if you have not already, you can still get any one of our indicator services for free for the first 30 days just to try it out with the code trial in all capitals. And you can literally just unsubscribe as soon as you subscribe. But, we believe that, hey, once you get these tools in your hands, it's going to be hard to live without them, especially the Quant Prime AI. Other than that, we do offer 20% off because it is the 7th year anniversary. We'll be running it for another couple days as well with the code year7, year in all capitals, and then the number 7. And without further ado, let's jump into it right here. So since we last spoke, the blue buy signal on the hash ribbons indicator has fired off and confirmed officially. This one officially confirmed on, what was this, Sunday? So with that in mind, I do look at that as setting up the potential for a long-term, position. And the way that I look at this and the way that I've tested this is that anytime we've gotten this blue buy signal, the last major trending high or low for Bitcoin has been the low before never closing below that low ever again. This has been consistent throughout the full history of Bitcoin, except for three times where the signal fired off. And yes, it did trade lower. So, a rather high hit rate, because we have seen about 20 prior iterations. And as it stands right now, this blue buy signal would correlate to the low right here from, this was a couple weeks ago, I think now, at the 10th of March at 76,700. That means that Bitcoin could theoretically come, back down around there, close to there, maybe even trade below, but not close below, for this condition to remain consistent. So that is why I like looking at setups like this, because it offers up a very obvious risk reward profile, and there's a very obvious area to be, managing risk. Again, 76,700, any sort of closures below there, that is a clear and obvious indication that something else significantly different is going on, and we're probably getting ready for, certainly below $70,000, but probably closer to 50,000 bucks, and that's going to call into question all the different cycle type stuff. Fair enough. Anyways, the reason why I also look at this signal as rather important is because from the actual blue buy signal, we typically see a pretty sizable move coming within the next couple months. On average, over the next 2 months, Bitcoin has actually gained close to 62% in terms of upside. Now, do I think that that's always going to be around there? I think that there's going to be a lot of variance within this. But for example, the last buy signal that we had, well, a couple months later, about literally 2 months later to the T, it was indeed 60%. So, if you've been on this channel for a while, you've seen several of these setups play out even over the past few years, and it has been rather consistent. We'll go over a couple more iterations right here. This one, again, correlating to this prior low. But again, within about 2 months, how much higher was this one? It was about 40% higher. I'd say that is, within the realm of reason there. We have a similar situation over here. Again, Bitcoin firing off the blue buy signal here, and then 2 months later, this one actually took a little bit more than 2 months, but it did indeed travel up much more than, well, ultimately 50%, but within about a 3-month period, you did see about a 30 to 50% gainer right there. Did take time. Again, there are going to be variance within these results, and it is not, again, a just immediate call to action to buy. Like I said at the beginning of this video, and I really sincerely mean this, as long as Bitcoin is below this March 6 high right here, there is a realistic threat of coming back down around the current lows. But the setup as it is, well, that would be an opportunity, because the closer that I'm able to buy on any sort of a pullback, if that does indeed happen, well, the lower risk that I will naturally have, because it would be a smaller difference between that risk management point and the entry. That's the idea here. Anyways, this may or may not be useful to you. I don't know. At the end of the day, I'll let you be the decider of that. And of course, if you want to get more updates on this, consider like, subscribing. It gets the YouTube algorithm to put these videos into your feed. And of course, we update these things all the time, and well, things change all the time too. Anyways, that's it for the hash ribbons indicator right here. This on its own, rather powerful, yes, but it is not complete without several other things that we've been looking for as well. One would be the tether dominance chart. You can just read this as a stablecoin dominance chart, because they are essentially one and the same at this point. Here is the full stablecoin index, by the way, versus just tether. You can see it's essentially the same chart, but it does offer added confluence that, look, we see another lower high right here. And if tether dominance is more likely to come to the downside, what does that mean for most cryptos, or, especially Bitcoin? Bitcoin's probably going to have some upside versus that. These things play inversely of each other, because the idea is that when people are fearful and selling, well, what are they going to go into? They're going to first likely go into some sort of stablecoin. And then, maybe they dump it from there, but that's why tether dominance typically goes up when Bitcoin price goes down, for example. And this one not only is confirming another local and lower high, but also confirming hidden bearish divergence here. That was confirmed as of last week. And on top of that, it's a rejection of that white moving average, the 200 simple. So I do look at this as likely to come back down to these lows here, something like this, perhaps. I guess I already have it in there. The good old LARP lines. But I do want to be on the record as saying, like, if and when it does come back down to this blue line right here, I don't think it's going to be breaking down lower than that, at least in the near term. So that probably does correlate to a local high in Bitcoin. How high does Bitcoin price get, before that happens? Who the fuck knows? But that would be an objective signal that I'd say, hey, it's a good idea to take at least a little bit of profits here. And I certainly will be doing that, assuming that the situation, happens. So moving on from there and getting back to my notes here, I do want to go over several of the other higher term timeframe signals that we've been looking at throughout the past couple weeks here, which have also confirmed as well. Or actually, this one right now is going to confirm, this particular one is going to confirm theoretically at the end of today, assuming that Bitcoin closes here or higher in the next 16 hours, 7 minutes, and 1 second and counting, then we will see the 5-day time frame print some hidden bullish divergence. The 5-day time frame has actually traded to a lower RSI level on this current pullback versus the lows from September. September, when Bitcoin was trading, 50, 60,000 bucks. That's a big fucking difference. That and big differences do matter for divergence. Further to the point, we see the same potential here on CME. So I really, really like that. Again, with that same point from September. And just for reference, yeah, Bitcoin was trading just under 60,000 bucks. So that is divergence by the pure definition of it. And we're also going to be simultaneously seeing that the 5-day stochastic oscillator is going to cross up today as well, assuming that Bitcoin closes anywhere above 83,200. Not only that, but this same pivot right here is in alignment with this long-term regression on this red line right here that you can see that has been governing major lows since 2022. Now, this has essentially called some pretty significant bounces even in bear markets. So even if Bitcoin is bearish, I still expect like a decent bounce to kind of continue from here overall. And if you're on the higher term timeframes, I just kind of want to swing back to the beginning of this video. It's like, if you're on the higher term timeframes, I don't know if it's relevant to you or not. You be the decision. You make the decision for yourself. But I don't know if it's relevant for you or not. If it matters that Bitcoin even comes back down to these lows, I mean, that is the way that I look at things, about a 10% move. So it's like I mean, it's actually a little bit more than a 10% move, perhaps. So that would be concerning, but again, as long as Bitcoin is below that $93,000 level, there is still a real threat of one more swing to the downside, especially when you look at the daily time frame right here. This is precisely the area that we marked off coming into this week, right around 88,000 to 90,000 bucks. That if we are going to see a local high and one more swing lower, it's extremely likely to come from this area right here. But like I said, I think that ultimately provides the opportunity ultimately provides an opportunity. So yeah. Anyways. We got that. And then one last major thing has also, this one's actually already confirmed, but I want to bring it back up, is the 5-day HPDRO indicator right here. So this is directional volatility. And we saw that the HPDRO on this dump had reached some pretty significant negative levels here, which we don't typically see unless if it's, a major low. In fact, all of the major lows throughout this market cycle have correlated with at least a negative 50 read on the 5-day HPDRO, and it correlates with all of these red vertical bars right here. Now, admittedly, this current move did trade lower than any other point that we've seen throughout this bull market cycle thus far, so maybe that's a signal that it is a change of behavior. But for now, as long as this thing is pointed up, I would be looking for it to return back to at least zero, and that again will help out short-term relative to the 5-day time frame price action. On top of that, if you are looking at the bands, you can see that a lot of the time when we do get these sort of reversion plays, price will at least come back to the median. And of course, we're going to get a new median number for tonight, but as of right now, it is just under 102,000 bucks. Again, I wouldn't just blindly say a target like that, but I suspect that this is going to come down significantly on this next open, and that's going to be sort of like a more medium-term target for Bitcoin. At some point, we do expect Bitcoin to hit that median. It's just the timing of it can massively influence what price that actually happens at. So it's just something to keep an eye on, just something to reference here. But ultimately, a lot of higher term time frame stuff firing off. Could it be a trap? Again, anything's possible, but all we have is probabilities to be going off of. So that's why I focus so much on that. And of course, when I have a setup that does have a rather high hit rate, I'm always going to play that out in the way that it, in the way that it has historically been more likely to resolve. Doesn't mean it's always going to be right. And like I said, there can very easily be another move back down around these lows, anywhere between 82,000 to 78,000 bucks. But I would still be looking at that as an opportunity. And I think that's probably a good place for me to be leaving off on this video. So yeah, it looks like the signals that we've been looking for are playing out here. Again, they can take a long time to play out, but we have our first major confirmations, and we'll continue to update on this conversation, throughout all of our videos, of course. So if you want to be updated on that, again, just consider subscribing, and we'll sign off on that note. As always, I want to wish everyone the best. Take care, much love, and see you hopefully Thursday.